Hey everyone, thanks for joining me today. In 1 Kings chapter 18, we read these words. Elijah climbed to the top of Mount Carmel, and he bowed low to the ground, and he prayed with his face between his knees. Then he said to his servant, "Go and look out toward the sea." And the servant went, and he looked, and he returned to Elijah, and he said, "I didn't see anything." Now, 7 times Elijah told him to go out and look. Finally, on the 7th time, his servant said to him, "Well, I saw a little itty-bitty cloud about the size of a man's hand rising up from the sea." Immediately Elijah shouted, "Hurry, go to Ahab and tell him, climb into your chariot and go back home, because if you don't hurry, the rain will stop you." And as soon as the sky was black with clouds, a heavy wind brought a terrific rainstorm. Now, the background of this story is that for 3.5 years, there had been drought in Israel. Absolutely no rain had fallen. Some of you right now in your life are experiencing a drought of some kind, maybe. It could be a spiritual drought where you feel dried up and unmotivated spiritually. Maybe it's a financial drought where you've endured a season of lack and scarcity. Maybe it's a physical drought or a relational drought in your marriage. The truth is, we all go through drought seasons, praying and wondering when it will end. And when you're in a drought, sometimes it's hard to see anything else but your circumstances. So in this story, as Elijah is praying for rain, he keeps sending his servant out to look for visible signs that the rain is coming. 6 times, the servant has to climb up the mountain looking for a sign, and he sees nothing. And then finally, on the 7th time, he says to Elijah, "Well, it ain't much, but I see a little tiny cloud the size of a man's hand." What is significant about that? That cloud appeared inconsequential to the servant, insignificant. In fact, it almost wasn't worth him mentioning to Elijah. But to Elijah, it was all he needed to recognize that God was on the move. So this story contains several truths about what is required for us to see our miracle. And the first truth is this, that seeing requires we understand that God is always working behind the scenes, even when we can't see it. The cloud is a reminder to us that God is at work even when we can't see it. It took 7 trips before the servant saw the cloud. But the truth is, the cloud was on the way immediately after Elijah began praying and sent the servant to look the very first time. Zechariah chapter 4 verse 10 says, "Despise not the day of small beginnings." That small cloud meant nothing to Elijah's servant, but it meant a lot to Elijah because he had the eyes to see it for what it was, coming rain. That cloud was all Elijah needed to recognize that God was on the move. You see, God often begins moving in our lives in little insignificant ways that turn into great big things. What we need is eyes to see it. So why could Elijah see and not his servant? Why do we struggle to see when we're in a drought? I don't know. But the second truth is this. From this story, seeing requires perseverance. Elijah persevered in prayer when he didn't see results. God starts working the moment we pray, but it often takes time for the answer to manifest. You see, Elijah shows us what it means to watch and pray. Elijah prayed, and then he sent his servant out to watch for a result. And he repeated that action until a sign appeared. The third truth is that seeing requires confidence that God can do miracles, and he will do miracles with little or nothing. All Elijah needed to see was that small cloud, no matter how insignificant it seemed to anyone else. You know, you and I, we tend to see a little sign that God may be on the move, and we just kind of ignore it. We pass it off, but not Elijah. He knew what it was. It was all he needed from God. The fourth truth is that seeing requires expectation. Elijah expected that it would rain after he prayed. That's why he sent his servant out to look for the rain. And the fifth and final truth is that seeing requires preparation. Upon seeing that small, tiny cloud, Elijah began to prepare for rain. He instructed his servant to tell Ahab to get back to Jezreel before the rain made travel impossible. He didn't wait until it started to rain to prepare and take action. And so my prayer for all of us today is this, that we would begin to see the small cloud that God is sending in our lives to let us know that He's moving, that He's getting ready to end our drought. That cloud could be in the form of a simple conversation with a friend, an act of kindness that we receive from a stranger, a sense of peace that we get amidst all the chaos in our lives. But I want you to know those small moments, when embraced, will lead to something greater. Remember, God's provision often starts in our life as a cloud the size of a man's hand. I'm praying that your drought will end. Well, thanks for joining me today. I'm glad you did. And as always, I look forward to seeing you this Sunday at 10 a.m. for our service. God bless and have a great day.